Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle podcast. And today we're looking at potential free agent guard targets, point guards, combo guards, shooting guards. If they play guard, we're looking at them. If you're new here, then make sure to hit subscribe on the channel. And if you scroll down, you'll find the Celtics Chronicle newsletter where I took a dive into 5 mid-level exception guards that I would be interested in coming into the offseason. Today we're looking at Mike's wish list. So I'm going to let Mike work through, and then I'm just kind of going to give rebuttals, whether I agree, whether I'd want that guy, whether I wouldn't, why I wouldn't, what would happen with the Celtics either way. So Mike, let's just dive in straight away. We've got your point guard list first.
And yeah, I went down the rabbit hole, so thank you for letting me do that. I kind of went by point guards, shooting guards, and combo guards. I do think they're three different entities, although there's a blur between some of them. So for my point guards, the facilitators, guys who are like lead guards running an offense, I went by platinum, gold, silver, and I went bargain bin. I like your savers, goodwill purchases, for lack of a better term. Sometimes they're coming off injuries, 4 seasons, reclamation projects. So my first pick for my platinum pick was Collin Gillespie, just turned 26, another Villanova tough guard. I just was really impressed with his ability to take advantage of the time he was given this year. They lost KD. The expectation was that they were going to take a big step back. And I know a lot of people were in love with Ryan Dunn, but I actually feel like Gillespie was the guy who took that step forward. His numbers were great across the board. He's obviously only 6'1". He's not the tallest guy, but he also shot really efficient as well in the opportunities he was given. So he's one that I really like. You want me to skip to the gold one?
No, we'll talk them through one by one, man. So my pushback on Gillespie is literally the fact that he's 6'1". And I think that when I'm talking about another guard addition, I'm doing so under the mentality that Peyton Pritchard stays, right? I know he's due a contract extension. There's an episode up already that you can go back on the channel. We do, myself and Tim, we break down whether Pritchard should get a contract extension. Then there's a chat with Yazzie Goslin, an NBA cap expert, on why Pritchard will probably get some form of an extension. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if Pritchard's going to be on the roster, I do not see a world where you want your 4-string guard to be another 6'1" guy. One of the only knocks that you can give on Pritchard right now is an aspect of his game that he can't change, and it's just that he lacks height, and that can make him easily hunted in the postseason. Now, if you have another guy that's the same height, granted, he's a tough-nosed guy, he plays hard, but if he's just as much of a target for teams, you don't really have a counter when teams are going at Pritchard then. And I think that one aspect that I'm looking at right now is I'd much rather a guard that can come in, play as a starter, or play coming off the bench and be able to improve either unit. And well, Gillespie does that from a mentality and impact standpoint. He doesn't do it in terms of his height, his projection to be a high production guard during the postseason when you start counting in the negatives that he brings defensively. And for those reasons, I think that Pritchard's the better 6'1" guard. I think Pritchard's one of the best second unit guards in the NBA, if arguably the best second unit guard in the NBA. I just think there'd be too much crossover for me to see the Celtics going out and getting him. Now, look, if Pritchard weren't on the team, I'd be on board with you. I'd be like, Gillespie will be a great pickup. But because he is, for me, this would be a hard pass.
Okay. So my next choice, my golden choice, platinum, gold, and silver. My gold is KPG, Kevin Porter Jr. I think I'm going to go with the theory that this is a player who's uber talented, obviously had a rough entry into the league with some out of basketball stuff. I don't know the details, so I don't want to speculate. But he's only 26. He's bigger, stronger, longer, and has excellent assist numbers. Now, he didn't play a ton last year, but once again, I'm going to take this as a guy I feel like if he played for Joe Mazzulla, through the lens of adding toughness once again at this position, I feel like it could be a sneaky good sign, and I don't think it would cost the MLE.
It definitely wouldn't cost the MLE.
Right.
Definitely. Yep. He played, 36, 38 games this year?
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is, if you go and listen to a bunch of Brad Stevens press conferences, if you listen to anybody talking about the way the Celtics go about building out their roster and scouting talent, one of the first things they do is they look for personality. They look for just the type, whether they can fit in with the culture that the Celtics have right now. And I'm a very big believer that one mistake doesn't define you as a person, doesn't define you as an individual, or in a professional or social standpoint. Obviously, there's exceptions to that rule, of course. But as far as Kevin Porter is concerned, he's had a few mishaps. I'm just not sure whether he's at a point where he's rebuilt his value enough that the Celtics would see him as somebody that doesn't have the potential to be a distraction on the team.
I thought of this like the New England Patriots back in the day, like when they were at the championship level, they would always sign like a Randy Moss. And people were like, oh, Corey Dillon, oh, but they would just fit into locker culture, for lack of a better term. That's what kind of this is where that slots in for me, is I recognize what you're saying, but I think I was just thinking like, what's it saying about ships rising or whatever, like helping each other out, like Tatum, Brown, they're respected, they're great players, they're professionals. That was just my thinking, for sure.
No, I think he's super talented as an offensive guard. He only played 38 games, averaged 17.4 points and 7.4 assists, 5.2 rebounds. I think if you're doing this as a buy low and potentially have one of those guys where you pick him up for dirt cheap and you rebuild his reputation, rebuild his value around the league, and then either keep him around or flip him. I'm not against picking up a Kevin Porter Jr. as a reclamation project. I actually think it's a really good idea. It's somebody I hadn't really considered. He can also play multiple positions as well, so you get that versatility. I'm not against it. I just think that there may be character questions that keep the Celtics away from picking him up. But again, like I said, he had a couple of mistakes. He hasn't been back in trouble, or he hasn't been making headlines for anything since he came back after those mistakes. Everybody deserves an opportunity to succeed, and I think that he's good enough. I'm just not sure whether he's the right type of fit for the way Brad Stevens likes to build out the roster, and that's just in terms of willingness to work and stuff. But I don't know the guy. I can't speak to his personality or his standing like that. I just think that I'm still probably a little bit burnt from the Kyrie, Marcus Morris year, where the Celtics went through a cultural reset afterwards. I'm just not sure whether Porter Jr. fits in with that.
That's fair. So my next choice is back on Phoenix, former Lakers Jordan Goodwin, only 27, 6'4", but with a 7-foot wingspan. And watching him play the Celtics this year was an absolute pain in the butt. You know what I mean? Even though the game wasn't a playoff game and it wasn't a game with some high stakes, he seemed like he played like that, with that energy regardless, was fearless, picked up all our guards, gave everybody a hard time. I think he might have been one of the better defenders on Jaylen Brown this year, to be honest with you, what games that I watched. And his efficiency numbers were pretty good. He actually shot close to 40% this year, which is awesome. Definitely, once again, a buy low player, somebody that the Lakers disregarded and that the Suns didn't sign to an extension. So he's eligible. He's a UFA. So
I think we've made the issue I had with Gillespie is the reason why I'd be okay with Goodwin. And I think that if you're picking up another guard, then you're doing it for optionality, for the ability to change defensive systems, to try different looks. And because of the length that Goodwin brings, the height and obviously the wingspan being most important, if things aren't working with Pritchard, maybe Pritchard's being hunted in the postseason, now you have another big, rangy body that you can bring in that's also going to be able to be a consistent offensive presence for you, can be a bit of an athletic guy getting downhill. I wouldn't be against it at all. I think that I'm expecting the Celtics to be shopping in a little bit of a higher tier than what we're going to be talking about Goodwin in. But if they end up using the MLE to try and bring in a big, or if they use it to pick up another wing, depending on whatever happens in the trade market, then look, you could do much worse than going to pick up Goodwin on a cost control deal. He also fits that Brad Stevens way of a guy that's analytically sound but hasn't had enough of a chance to show himself. Now, so he did play 70 games for Phoenix this season, out in the West, got 10 starts. They impressed this year. I wouldn't be against a Goodwin pickup. I wouldn't. I think that's actually a really under the radar guy that hasn't been spoke about as a potential target for the season.
And that's my thought, was like, Brad isn't going to necessarily always get the shiny object that we're all expecting. Look at Josh Minot, Luka Garza, right? And also, admittedly, looking at the facilitating type guards here, I was thinking more like, regardless of who we get as a combo guard or a two guard or a wing, we could still fit these guys in on the team. That was my thought process, with the exception of Gillespie, who may be priced out based on his performance. And then my bargain bin guy, we'll call it like the Mike Conley type thing role, where like last had a guy on the roster, but like savvy vet, former Duke player, doesn't hurt. Tyus Jones, he's going to be 30 this year. coming off his worst season as a pro. If you look at his numbers across the board, they're terrible. Normally, solid shooter, good with assist to turnover, not super tall, but plays tough. Just a solid third point guard, a third facilitating guard, basically. And I feel like you get him on it for a song, and you know he's not going to cause a lot of chaos in the clubhouse, for lack of a better.
I think that with Jones, you'd have to give up your recency bias, which I think is terrible anyway. In terms of just Celtics fans saying they want a guard that can control an offense, that can create for others, that can just run everything as a true old school point guard, walking through that door anytime soon, at least, if at all. I think that Jones is actually one of your better options if you want to go that old school, legitimate playmaking point guard. He could do a little bit of everything. This year's numbers are awful. I've just pulled them up: 3 points per game, 2.4 assists, and 1.1 rebounds. Spread over 3 teams. He just couldn't stay anyway. Ended up in Orlando, Dallas, Denver. Didn't really have much production in any of those places. He was still getting minutes. It's just awful. He's been a guy that stuck around on teams for a while. And to begin with, he spent, 4 seasons in Minnesota, 4 seasons in Memphis, 1 in Washington, 1 in Phoenix, and then he's just bounced around a little bit. I think that as a fourth guard, then definitely a guy that gives you optionality next to Pritchard, somebody that gives you a different look. Again, though, my biggest issue is he's 6 foot. He's smaller than Pritchard.
He is.
And I just think that I do not expect or want the Celtics to add a second small guard. I like Tyus Jones. I like what he gives you. Pritchard's the better guard right now. He's the better player overall. For that reason, I'd be out.
All right. So that moves us to shooting guards, which is really, it's got my we call it a blanket that a kid's addicted to. It's called a whoopee, right? A binky. Kids like binkies, right? This is my binky this offseason. I don't know if the playoff performance is going to make it unattainable. Kind of sucks if that's the case. But this is the guy I want. My platinum choice for a 2-guard, Ayo Dosunmu. I think that's how you pronounce it. If it's not, correct me. I wanted him when we picked up Vooch. I was bummed we got Vooch. It's hindsight 2020. But that's the player I wanted to acquire for Anthony Simon. Because the defense, the hustle, the efficiency numbers, he shot really well this year. And then he proved himself in the playoffs when he was given an opportunity for Minnesota. He was awesome. So this is the person I want. Will he fit into the 15 million MLE this year? That might be tough. The market will dictate that, but it's a player I definitely would love to see on the Celtics this year with the bullet for me.
So I've got Ayo as number 2 on my guard wish list right now. Podcast player of your choice. I like Ayo a lot. I think one thing that I really like about him is he doesn't need ridiculous 3-point volume to be effective. He very much picks his shots, understands where his spots are, gets to them, and then fires away. He's had a great season offensively. His 3-point percentage has been steady, and it's been around or above league average for most years over the last 3 or so. Gets downhill, pressures the rim, makes reads out of that pressure. Doesn't finish, considering how much he gets to the rim, doesn't finish at an elite level, but finishes at a very reliable rate. He's a guy that I think comes in and instantly gives you some firepower, instantly gives you a little bit of playmaking feel as well. Can play off ball, can play on ball, can do a bunch. League average defender, maybe just a bit below league average a lot of the time. I think if you put him on the Celtics with their commitment to defense, that he could take a step forward. Ayo is a guy that I really like the idea of coming to Boston. In terms of the MLE, yeah, he might have played himself into a bigger contract. But what the Celtics can do is they can pay him the full MLE this year and then have his contract escalate over the next few years. So he'll take a bit of a discount this season and make it up on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And that would be a way of getting around that 15 million restriction. If he's going to sign a 4 for 60 anyway, there's ways you can, or a 4 for 55 or whatever it may be. There's ways you can get there without needing to commit all that money up front. So that would be an option for Boston. I definitely like the idea of it.
Yeah, he's, once again, I know we say this a lot. I do. The Styles makes fights. Thinking about the Sixers series, can't help but think, man, it would have been great to have him out there on Maxey. It's just recency bias. Maybe it's just you got to come up with solutions. You got to help D. White out and Pritchard. This seems like the perfect plug-and-play player for us.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think that he's the type of guy that fits what Brad was talking about, getting downhill more, pressuring the rim, but he's got the shooting ability to fit into what Joe wants. It feels like a win-win for both guys.
All right, gold package, another player that we've played recently, Quentin Grimes, I think his regular season, first off, I can't believe he's like 26.
Yeah.
I think I was shocked. I thought this guy was 32. And so I pulled it up. I was like, wow, it feels like he's been in the NBA forever, right? Between the Knicks and the Mavs before this stop, I was like, wow, I can't believe that. But he had an excellent playoff run against the Celtics. He had one game where you could argue he was the reason why we lost, even in that second half. A tough defender, plays with a lot of confidence, and historically a pretty solid three-point shooter. I looked at the regular season numbers; they weren't great, but I feel like historically speaking, he's been a solid three-point shooter as well.
That's fair. I've just pulled his numbers up on Cleaning the Glass, which has a garbage time filter. And I'm looking at over the last, say, 3 seasons. I think 3 is enough considering he was in New York, got moved to Detroit for half of the season, then signed in Dallas, got moved to Philly for a while, and then had a full season in Philly. So over the last 3 years, this season was the first season he stayed on the same team. And obviously he'd had a couple of years in New York beforehand. So when I'm looking at it now, I'm looking at scoring, just overall shooting percentages. 41% from three-point land 3 seasons ago, 37% last season, 34% this season. So it's declined steadily. And 2 of those seasons, or at least a season and a half, he's been on the same team. He's spending a lot more time getting downhill, attacking the rim, which is fine. But he doesn't really have a mid-range game, which tells me that he doesn't have a counter to the way defense looks at him. Like, he's not going to attack closeouts off the bounce. When he gets down to the rim, if somebody's there, he's not going to try and let a floater or a push shot go, which can kind of let himself run himself into trouble a little bit. Does finish good around the rim. Has been at 68, 69, and 69 over the last 3 seasons. I'm not sure it'd be worth committing the MLE to when you've got a guy like Ayo available, and there's another guy we're going to speak about shortly that could also fit there. So I like him, but I'm just not sure he's the right guy for the Celtics. I don't think he's enough of a jump for me to be like, that was worth the MLE.
He's like a slightly more refined Jordan Walsh in some ways. He doesn't have a mid game. There's a lot of ferocity at the rim, and there's some 3-point shooting. Not so great last year, but he did well in the second half of last season when everybody was out for that team too. Having said that, I'll go to my silver player, somebody who I've always wanted on the Celtics, who seems to have had his Tyus Jones season over in LA for the Clippers. Bogdanovic, not to be confused with the other guy whose name is similar to him, who looked like the villain from Ghostbusters 2, Vigo. At 27, once again, always plays with a little bit of an edge, always was a pain in the butt for the Celtics when he played against us on the Hawks. And his previous stop, which was, help me out, where was he before that? Before that,
I've just pulled him up. He was at Sacramento, then Atlanta.
Sacramento.
I will say he's not 27. He'll be turning 34 next season.
No way. You look at the same guy?
Yeah, Bogdanovic spent the season with the Clippers.
Why do I have 27? I apologize to our listeners. Must have got mixed up.
Man.
Maybe it's
we all make
clerical
mistakes.
error. All right.
Nah,
well, then he's a savvy.
times I've said some shit.
Savvy vet who I think is taller, longer, and tougher than a lot of European 2 guards who've come through the NBA too. I think if he stays in the league this year, it's going to be on a flyer. It's not going to be on some long-term commitment based on last year and his age then. But just a guy I like. It's one of those guys I have in my mind that I've always thought would look good in Celtics green and on a team.
I like Bogey. I've been a fan of him for a minute. I think that he's... I live in Europe. I'm English, which apparently Europeans tell me is not European, but if I speak to Americans, I'm a European. I don't know what I am. I'm just in this weird way. But being out in Europe, I get to watch a bit of European basketball too. I think I'm a big fan of Bogdanovic. What I will say is he, at his age now, and the way the Celtics are trying to play and the pace that they want to play at. I know they had the slowest team in the league in terms of pace of play this past season, but just the intent that they look to get into their actions quickly, which is like tempo. I look at tempo and then pace is 2 completely different things. And I know they're the same word, but just in terms of a basketball. And I explain this all the time on the newsletter. If you subscribe, you'll already know.
Yep.
What I will say is I don't think he fits the tempo of the way the Celtics will play. I think he'd actually really struggle to get up and down the floor the way Boston likes, get into the offense as early as they like to. And I also ask myself, has this slide that we've seen from him been an indicator of, hey, you're coming up to 34, you're out of your prime at this point? Is what we saw this season a sign of the player that you are now, or a player that you're becoming? So I'd be, look, for a minute, a vet minimum or just above the floor of a vet minimum, maybe I'd be okay. But I just think there's so many younger guys that, might cost a little bit more, but they could give you better impact.
Yeah, I agree. So I just have two in my bargain bin. I won't spend too much time because I don't think they're that realistic. One is Gary Payton II, who I honestly think if he doesn't resign with the Warriors, he'll probably retire. He's been out that way his whole career. He's a West Coast kid. He's also older. He's going to be 34 next
Dealt
year.
with a few injuries.
Yeah, he's tough
Major.
as nails.
Yeah.
Pain in the butt. Once again, one of those guys like you think, man, what a pain in the butt he is. The other one is Jason Tatum's former babysitter, Mr. St. Louis, Bradley Beal, mostly because there's no reason for him not to come to the Celtics pretty cheap based on his performance the last couple of years and some of the injuries and stuff. And it would be a great story. I think you definitely, as much as you've heard about Beal's performance, which has been obviously rough the last 6 years, more or less, right? It's been a minute. You never hear anything bad about the player in regards to like professionalism, personality. And like I said, I feel like if JT went to Brad and said, hey, we need 15 guys, you'll get me Brad Beal on the vet minimum. Why not? That's kind of that.
As long as Bradley Beal can accept the fact that he'd be coming in as a role player, and I think that's okay. It's just, it's felt like he's been cursed for most of his career. It didn't work out in Washington with John Wall. Didn't work out in Phoenix. Just doesn't seem to be working out wherever he goes. I wouldn't want that to follow him to Boston.
It's crazy how you remember that game, the series with the Wizards, right? Oubre, Wall, Beal. That was a tough series, right? We have to blame Kelly Olynyk. He ruined everybody's career with that one game.
Kelly Olynyk is one, like, I love Kelly Olynyk, dude.
Right? That one game, Kelly Olynyk ruined the Wizards.
But just destroyed them, dude. The KO game.
There it is.
And we'll move on to your combos now.
Yeah, and these are probably, I think, more in Adam's. Yeah, okay. I co-sign a lot of this. I think his fit, I'm not going to speak for you, Adam. You're a big boy, but I think my number one is Coby White, 26 years old. If that's wrong, tell me. But to talk about having a nuclear weapon on your team, like the guy is just like all gas, no brakes, clutch, like a taller, bigger version of
Jacob
Cole
Fatu
Anthony. What's that?
Jacob Fatu.
You know what I mean?
Know what I mean?
But yeah, big fan. And I think he proved when he went to the Hornets and got to play in real minutes in big situations that he was about that moment too, which is what we want. You know what it's like in the Garden. It's regular season games have more energy than playoff games in other teams. So I think he fit in awesome.
Analytically, Coby White's a great scoring guard, layups and threes. That's what he does, and he does it well. His defense has been quite bad. It's been below league average for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think that he can give you a lot. As a scorer, he gives you so much. And I think the versatility he provides, he can play on ball, off ball, do a bunch. But I actually have him 4th on my wish list.
Okay.
And that's just, I prefer other guys. It's not saying he's better than, like, other guys are better than him that are available. It's just my preference for the way they fit the Celtics. He's got good size, 6'5". One of the things I've put here is just terms of, like, he gets to the rim a bunch. His his frequency this year was 28% of his overall offense came at the rim. And that was his lowest point. Sorry, it was 28% of his offense while he was with the Hornets. Over years, last 3 years with the Bulls, it's been in the 30s, but he's only shot around like the low to mid 60s at the rim. And I'm like, if you're spending nearly a third of your offense getting downhill to the cup, I'd like to see you finishing in that high 60s to low 70s. It's only a marginal difference. I think Boston's spacing had opened that up for him. But Coby White's great. I really like him. I think he's really came into his own over the last 2 or 3 years. Would not be against it at all.
Yeah. My gold option is a guy, I can't believe I think he's underrated.
Yeah.
Which is Collin Sexton, man. I don't think he'll ever live up to the savior role that I think a lot of people at Cleveland were hoping for him. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid.
Oh, for
coming out of Alabama, right? But he's been steady. And I think the perception getting traded a lot makes somebody get a reputation, right? But as far as being expendable for some reason or nobody necessarily is falling in love with, I think a lot of that goes a lot to do with rebuilds, remodels, and perception more than it is the player itself. Because I think of watching him when he played on the Jazz, the Hornets, and the Bulls, and I see the same player all the time. He plays hard, he plays with energy and effort, and I just think this is a guy you could probably talk about buying low and maybe get I don't want to compare him to D White, but I do think he'd be amazing on the Celtics as an option.
He's number 1 on my wish list, period, point blank. But if the Celtics are going to pick up any guard this season on an MLA, Collin Sexton would be the guy that I wanted. Gets to the rim a bunch. He's like the best of Ayo Dosunmu and the best of Coby White. Gets downhill a ton like Coby White, that is, not obviously Kobe Bryant, RIP. Gets picks his shots on the perimeter. Like Ayo has a very similar shooting percentage as Ayo, just very reliable. But he has a bit of a mid-range game. He can attack counters. He can hit floaters, hit push shots. He doesn't mind putting the ball on the floor to attack closeouts. He just gives you a bit of the best of both of them. And defensively, he's arguably as good, if not better than both of them as well. I think he gives you some physicality that neither of those other two can give you.
And a better facilitator than the other two as well.
He
runs an offense better.
Runs an offense better. Honestly, for what the Celtics need and to bridge the gap between what Brad said he wants and what we know Joe wants, I think that Collin Sexton's actually the guy. So that would be somebody that if the Celtics threw all of their MLE at him, hard kept themselves at the first apron to get him, I actually think it was smart business. So yeah, I'm all in on Collin Sexton.
And my silver guy is a guy that I've always liked, I've always thought was underrated, which is Josh Okogie.
Yeah, I like Josh Okogie.
I mean, he's done awesome for UMA the last couple of years. Before that, he did excellent in Minnesota as a rotation player as well. He's another guy who's longer. His wingspan is longer than his height. And he's not short, but he's got like a power forward wingspan. Shot 38% from three the last 2 seasons, and he's an above average athlete. He always seems up for the task of guarding the best player on the other team. He never shies away from contact. I think he'd be a great consolation prize if the South can't land some of the bigger names on here.
Yeah, I'd be fine with Okogie. It's not somebody I've watched enough or dove into enough to give like a fair kind of like a lot of these other guys we're speaking about. I've done stat dives on them recently, or I looked into him today when you sent me over the list. Okogie isn't somebody that I've seen enough of. And obviously I'm seeing these guys multiple times a year watching them play the Celtics. There's a couple of other teams I like to keep up with as well. But Okogie hasn't been one of them. So I don't feel comfortable kind of bullshitting my way through.
Yeah, no, I just like him a lot. He just seems like a guy Brad would draft.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'll just say this last, but certainly not least for me, okay, is the reunion tour. My favorite all-time player, Marcus Smart. It's just, look, it's my guy. I was so happy we won the championship. I'm not going to lie. Part of me wished he had been there for that ring.
That's fair.
I coach basketball at a school that's not known for its excellence in athletics, okay? I'll leave it at that. But a nice go flag. You love you guys. But I tell the kids, but you can want to be Kobe Bryant or Steph Curry or a lot of these players, but you can be parts of Marcus Smart. A lot of what he does is about heart, effort, hustle, technique. And I just think that's something that I've always just been like, look, you really want to impress me in minutes. Do the things that Marcus Smart does on the court. And that's just it. And I know Celtic fans, I've seen a lot of talk. I'm sure we can talk about this at another time about reunion tour stuff. But yeah, Marcus Smart. That's it.
I was a Marcus guy, and then I wasn't a Marcus guy. Like I'm the same as any other Celtics fan. One day I loved him, next day he pissed me off.
Yeah.
I think that's just the way the Marcus Smart experience goes. I wouldn't be against it. I do think the way he plays, his decline is right around the corner. Right. He'll either start missing games or he'll stop putting his body on the line as much. I don't know. I feel like the Celtics got rid of him. They traded away from him, partly because I'm not sure how he meshed with Mazzulla, and partly because I'm just not sure 100% that they felt like he was going to be available enough and at a level high enough when the time came to contend for a championship.
And KP, what a great trade.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was a guarantee. Like you do that trade 100 out of 100 times.
Absolutely.
I'm a big Smart guy. If they did bring him back, as long as Smart could accept that he's coming off the bench and it's not going to be the same role that he had last time, be okay. But I just don't see it happening. Yeah, wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah,
but don't see it.
But that's it for me for Mike's wish list. There are tons of it's amazing the rabbit hole you can dive down, and you start looking at it. You like dumpster diving and stuff. We find out like guys that Cam Thomas or Cole Anthony who didn't even get to play in the playoffs because of the contracts they had or the way they were waived at the end of the year and stuff like that. But
with that, everybody, I'm going to be diving into the Celtics' potential MLE wing targets, and that'll be being sent out to inboxes to all subscribers on the Celtics Chronicle newsletter on Wednesday. So if you're seeing this and you're seeing it early enough, go and subscribe. You'll get it sent to your inbox. If you're seeing it later in the day, it'll be up on CelticsChronicle.com. While you're there, make sure you subscribe. And before you leave YouTube to go and check out that stuff, because you're awesome and we all know that's what you want to do, hit subscribe here as well to show us some love. I'm your boy, Adam Taylor. This is my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Mike Weber. And we'll be back again tomorrow with some more Celtics Chronicle content. Deuces.